We're on This Week in Common Sense for the first full week of November, and we've just talked about Tuesday's elections. On Thursday, you wrote about something bearing on elections in Colorado. It was called Blue Colorado Big Spenders.
Yes, and this was another measure. Now, this was not a citizen initiative. This was put on by the state legislature, by the Speaker of the House. It's a Democratic Party-controlled state legislature. The governor's a Democrat. Democrats have really turned Colorado blue, but Proposition CC, two C's, the letters, and it was really, it's about their taxpayer bill of rights. And what the taxpayer bill of rights does is to say government growth should be naturally population plus inflation. And so from year to year, the taxpayer bill of rights, or TABOR as they call it, limits the growth of government in terms of spending. So that if you get a big, boom in the economy where actually government spending might need to be less, well, instead it fills all the government coffers and they spend all the money. And then when there's a downturn, they say, oh my goodness, we need to raise taxes. What the taxpayer bill of rights does is to create a normal growth pattern, inflation plus population growth. And if government wants to grow more, they can go to the public and say, let us raise taxes. Or if government revenue comes in because times are good, and as I understand it, I think Colorado may have the best economy in the country. No small thanks to TABOR, I'm sure. If they want to, grow some and the money's there, they can ask the people, instead of returning this as a refund to taxpayers, we'd like to keep it to spend on transportation or education or what have you. Well, that's what this Proposition CC was. It was a referendum where legislators asked the public, can we spend the $37 million we're getting in addition to our growth limit, our spending limit? Can we spend that extra 37 million instead of returning it to taxpayers? And of course, those in favor of spending the money far outspent the folks saying, hey, no, let's return it to taxpayers. But the vote was very strong to return it to taxpayers. And so again, this measure, TABOR, I like it. I think most people who like limited government spending and government growth to be checked like it. But there have been times in the past where voters said, okay, you can grow faster than the limits that we've set. There have been changes. There was a downturn because of drought back in the 2000s, and they voted to let all the money that came in be spent and not returned to taxpayers for several years to kind of get back up to speed for state government. So voters are I think, thoughtful, and of course it's their government, so they ought to make the decision. But so often when we talk about initiatives or just voters making the decision, this was a referendum referred by the legislature. But we get this idea that, oh, they'll vote down every tax increase. They'll cut taxes to the bone. Well, they don't. They have the opportunity, they don't. And I would argue voters, I think, are a lot more thoughtful and have made far fewer serious mistakes in legislating than our seasoned career legislators in various states. So, that was another good outcome on Tuesday. Another, probably the feel-good story of the week was Monday's post. One vote from Tyranny, which doesn't sound heartwarming, but our friend Ron Calzone, who works with a group, Missouri First, which he named long before Donald Trump had America First. but it's a group or an association that lacks a bank account. They don't spend money. They don't buy lunch for legislators. They don't, their goal is to let people know what's going on with legislation. So read it, understand it, tell people about it, educate folks. And he has found all kinds of ways to allow people without coming to the Capitol to weigh in and testify, in essence, to deliver statements on different bills. I mean, it's just a beautiful bit of grassroots citizen empowerment. He's a super guy, and of course he goes to the Capitol all the time. I've gone with him, and in the past to lobby on and I say lobby, that's part of this whole controversy. But to talk to legislators about bills that are important, initiative and referendum bills, and he talks to them on all kinds of things. Legislators haven't liked it so much because he has called them out on things that they otherwise, had he not been there, and had other people he brought to the Capitol not been there, they would have gotten away with things they didn't get away with. There are laws that dictate how they can amend different bills, and yet legislators tend to amend them any way they feel like, whether you like it or not. But someone like Ron Calzone, that stickler, that pesky citizen, he's filed suit and gone to court pro se himself. I don't think pro se is the right word, but himself, representing himself, learning how to do the process to challenge, and he's gotten help when he's needed it, but challenging these laws that they're passing illegally because they think they can do anything they darn well please, and he has won. So they know him in the Capitol, and they don't like him, except for the really good guys and gals. And so years ago, I believe it was 2014, two legislators. This came out in court documents. It wasn't clear at the beginning, but two legislators went to a lobbyist with the lobbyist guild in the state and asked him to file a complaint with the Ethics Commission, demanding that Ron Calzone is in the Capitol lobbying legislators, and he is not registered as a lobbyist, hadn't paid the $10 fee, hadn't made the reports that he should have to make, and he should be fined $1,000. Now, for two loser legislators to do that is despicable, not shocking. For a lobbyist to not be well-versed in the way these things work enough to have educated those two legislators that, it really would be better if you didn't do this, if I didn't do this. Instead, he said, sure, I'll play ball and I'll try to destroy someone's rights as a free person, so that we can control power here in the Capitol. He filed, but of course there's a prohibition against somebody filing as a representative of somebody else. And so the question is he filing as himself, or is he filing as the attorney? I think it was the attorney for the lobbyist guild in the state, basically the state lobbyist organization. And anyway, when it all got sorted out, it got dismissed. Well, then the ethics people bring it back. And so anyway, Ron has taken it up in federal court, challenged it. It went to the 8th Circuit. And of course, here's the whole basis of it. I don't think they have a right to regulate lobbyists the way they do anyway, because people have a right to lobby. There's nothing untoward about lobbying, unless you lobby in an untoward way. And then there is. But of course, that's true for everything. So, but Ron Calzone earns $0 lobbying. He buys lunches and goodies and gifts and makes campaign contributions to these guys. Zero. The group Missouri First does nothing financially. It's not spending money. It's not giving these guys little presents like your average special interest does. Because it's not a special interest, it's a bunch of grassroots people who believe in constitutional governance. So they have no power whatsoever to say to a volunteer, you can't come to the Capitol unless you register. We all have to register to talk to our legislators before we think in the morning about a political issue. Should there be a government bureau that we register and pay a $10 fee to think about it or to speak about it? I mean, what crap. This should have been done so long ago. But anyway, so he goes through all the process. He goes to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Federal Circuit Court. 2-1, they say, yes, he needs to pay $1,000 fine and he needs to register as a lobbyist, and just ridiculous. Well, they asked for an en banc hearing, which is the full Eighth Circuit. The Eighth Circuit, and I don't know the timing of this, so I won't guess. But either before they asked for that or as they were about to ask for that, the full Eighth Circuit comes in and basically vacates this 2-1 ruling, and then comes down with a decision that says, look, someone who earns no money from lobbying the legislature is acting as a private citizen and has every power and right to do it without registering with anyone or paying any fee or anything else. Very clear. Thank goodness. Finally, it'll be interesting to see if somehow the crazy people at the AG's office or the Missouri Ethics Commission decide they want to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. But either way, it's been rightly decided now. The Supreme Court wouldn't take it in a million years. It's obvious that if someone doesn't earn any money as a lobbyist, doesn't give legislators, gifts, doesn't have to register as a lobbyist. Thank goodness. We're all free citizens. Why, though, did I name it One Vote from Tyranny? And it was because on the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, en banc, the entire circuit, the vote was 6-5. 6-5. 5 appeals court justices on the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals in this country. This is middle America, right in the middle, thinks that the government can force someone who earns no money and makes no gifts or anything else, who just goes and provides information to legislators and communicates with other citizens, has to register and pay a fee to do that? That is insane. And so, I followed this case. I think the world of Ron Calzone, and it's his whole family, his wife Ann, the family is just, they're just heartwarming, just inspiring people. He is just as solid as the day is long. And so I followed this and his other efforts, and I just see him again and again standing up for the little guy, standing up to, on an issue that other people might say, well, it's not the most important thing, or geez, life's tough, I'm busy, I can't do everything. He's been successful in business, although he continues to earn a living and be active in business. I don't know where he finds all the time, but he puts in quality time to do things that go toward constitutional governance and the rule of law and basic concepts of freedom. And it's so exciting to see him succeed again and again, doing it the right way. And so hats off to him. It's the feel-good story. It's wonderful. But then the fact that it was 6-5, I think we all ought to say, thank you, Ron Calzone. And then we need to take just a moment to think about what the heck we can do to make it to where the next time they vote on some fundamental right that we have as citizens, that the vote isn't 6-5 or 5-4 on the Supreme Court. I mean, these are fundamental things. And, imagine that you couldn't go to the legislature and walk the halls and talk to a legislator without registering and paying a fee. That's, that's, and just, and that alone, I mean, the fee was $10 or something. You say, oh, what's the big deal? But just the principle of it, that prior restraint on basic communication and communication with the people who are working for us, supposedly, and are supposed to represent us. Anyway, that I think was a great story. And the other one that was for today, the other common sense of the week, whistles blown. It's interesting. We talk about anonymity and naming whistleblowers or naming other folks. And of course, everyone's aware of the whistleblower who now has been named, although you don't see it. It's not ubiquitous in the press. Most of the mainstream media hasn't named him at all. And I've seen his name several times, but I would butcher it if I tried to say it now. So it is not ubiquitous. But then, of course, there was also the person at ABC who then moved to CBS who released the Amy Robach rant kind of on an open mic where she talked about ABC spiking her story on Jeffrey Epstein. And she had all the evidence that it took years to finally come out in a recent book and other materials. And of course, she's livid because she had the scoop and she had it years earlier. And ABC said no. And, we can argue, well, maybe the information they had, it wasn't as solid a story or this or that. It sure seems like they deep six this story when it was a live story. That's my sense from what I've read. I wasn't there at every instance of everything. None of us can know for sure, but that's sure the way it seems. And so then ABC reaches out to CBS. We still don't know the name of this person who released this tape or leaked it. Reaches out to CBS and gets CBS to fire this person. So that's the little bond between ABC and CBS is if any of our employees would ever release any information we didn't like, we fire them, even if they work for the other. If they mess with any of us, we fire them, which is a little bit different than the attitude they're taking toward that the whistleblower in the whole Trump, the latest Trump, I shouldn't say the whole Trump, the latest Trump impeachment episode should not be named. And of course, it led off with Corey Feldman, who has alleged that he was abused as a child actor in Hollywood by very powerful people, that it was an open secret, and that Hollywood is a awfully corrupt culture. And he was on Dr. Oz's show, and Dr. Oz, even though Feldman hasn't named names, Dr. Oz named the name. So anyway, it's interesting to look at the press taking different perspectives, different actions on different cases. But I suspect we're going to have more issues on whether names are named or not.
Very good. I think that's a wrap for This Week in Common Sense. And we should direct people to thisiscommonsense.com, where next week you'll have 5 more pieces.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.